and welcome to this special edition of The Road to ATS. This is our series leading up to the ATS event on September 10th. Today we've got Danny Hopwood in the office. Danny, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And today we're talking about the service layer. We did a panel last week about the future of the service layer, and we didn't have a holding group representative on the panel. But today we have a holding group person here to talk about the vision of the holding groups going forward. And Danny, you obviously moved to Omnicom recently, so tell us about that. Tell us that recent move.
Yeah, it was a pretty big decision, but it was, I've done like 7 years at Publicis prior to that, so it's definitely felt like a change. The market is kind of teeming with opportunities at the moment. I think in terms of what can happen with how the agency services the clients or how people are structured in a business. So yeah, it was kind of an easy decision to make to go up to Omnicom. And it's a very different organisation, very different, as I'm probably presuming WPP is to Havas, Havas is to Aegis. Omnicom, I can pretty much say hand on heart, is very client focused in terms of how it structures its teams, how it structures its business, and it's doing them very well at the moment. Okay,
so the sort of ecosystem has completely changed. Someone keeps saying to me, this is an epoch year for the industry, which I kind of subscribe to. You know, the convergence of ad tech, martech. The clients are looking at a customer-centric sort of view of the world now, and they're expecting a lot more from their service layer partners. And obviously, the holding groups have been under a lot of pressure from the press, even from the markets. And we've had some sort of big sort of departures, like Martin Sorrell's gone and done his own thing, probably to do with WPP 2.0. Who knows what he's doing? But talk about a little bit about sort of your view of the whole, because you've worked in the holding groups for a long time. How have they sort of like reacted to this change in the market, or has there been that big of change that they've had to sort of like they've been caught off guard a little bit?
I think I think in general at the very beginning of it, like when did the kind of the PR and the noise start around consultancies? I'd say like 2016, end of 2016.
Yeah.
So like end of 2016, I think many people in many senior roles in agency holding companies were probably thinking, not a massive threat, not too concerned about it. Got to like midway through 2017, the kind of market is so focused around transparency that is a door in for anyone right now. And it's a very emotive word, it's got very subjective meanings, and that just creates opportunities everywhere. So I think many holding companies prior to that kind of midpoint in 2017 were probably like not too concerned about this. After 2017, or midway through 2017, I think everyone, I suspect, had a slide in their deck when they're presenting their business plans, their forecast for their year, their reason for investment in new areas of development or solutions for clients in agency holding companies, probably had every single logo of the consultancies there, Accenture, Deloitte, PwC, pretty much everyone you can name, as a reason as to why they need to do more in a certain space, which may be consultancy, which may be helping advertisers figure things out. So I think they're now paying full attention to that area of the marketplace. And I think it's right to do so. But I definitely agree with you that they maybe were a little relaxed to responding to that. Probably feeling that what they do is not something that everyone can do, which is true. But then again, there is easy ways in to help clients on certain things like technology selection. If you're an agency holding company who's got a team of 150 people running however much in spend across however many different DSPs, that's more people than an Accenture is going to have or a Deloitte is going to have, maybe, as an example.
So there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of sort of existential threats to the holding group model. But I think a lot of it's overblown. But let's talk about why the in-housing happened, right? Or the idea of in-housing and sort of where it's at the minute, because I feel it's a little bit of a story that's kind of a little bit out of kilter with reality, in the sense that you hear stories about in-housing and housing, but when you actually start to figure this stuff up, and we were talking about this earlier about programmatics, about pushing buttons, which is sort of bullshit, because the reality is that most of the deals, particularly in video, are PMP related, and you have to go out and negotiate that with publishers. And then if you extend that into other programmatic channels, or what I call channels that are being programmaticized, or even, well, I think that's a proper word, but have a programmatic element to them. You talk about digital at home, which then you've got to talk to those vendors on a local basis. And it becomes sort of overwhelming for a brand to think, oh, I thought I could bring all this in-house. So just talk about some of the trends you've seen around that specific, because that seems to be the key sort of pressure point a minute for holding groups.
I think we have to kind of go back not even a couple of years, like maybe again 1.5 to 2 years, right? Netflix is kind of steaming on the stock market. Uber's all the rage. Companies like Kayak and anyone who has this kind of user login opportunity suddenly becomes quite a dominant marketing business.
A direct-to-consumer relationship.
Yeah, exactly, D2C. And the stock market rewards them very well. You know, they see 20% bumps in stock price, huge subscriber growth, huge adoption, market by market. Great. Loads of traditional and heritage type advertisers suddenly see these threats. Unilever being one of them, who goes and acquires Dollar Shave Club, another D2C play. And that basically kickstarts a conversation around how do we do something that looks like these guys? How do we make ourselves as a heritage, traditional business for maybe 150 years, do something that suddenly looks very similar to these direct-to-consumer brands? And what that then results in is like, well, we need to be more connected to our consumer. Along parallel to that, at the same time, is the conversations, emotional conversations around transparency, which provide an opportunity, like an opportunity for anyone to get involved and do something different to what an agency has done. So you've got clients wanting to do something on a more direct-to-consumer basis. You've got the sentiment and emotional attachment to transparency, and you've got a raft of new players entering the market offering consultancy on how to build digital transformation, business transformation, and that means a more direct-to-consumer approach. So all of that combined into one thing results in a raft of in-housing proposals going to pretty much every single brand across the marketplace, or marketers having conversations around transparency, not necessarily trusting the responses that they're getting and deciding that that's something that they're just going to do themselves. Now, in doing that, they're kind of not unearthing the full complexity that goes on within the programmatic landscape. And I think it sometimes scares marketers. It certainly scares people in agencies sometimes when they realize the amount of work that has to go into delivering programmatic campaigns. There's this, like you said, there's this whole rumor of it's push a button, it's algorithmically optimized. You don't really need anyone there to do it. It's all artificially intelligent machine learning capabilities.
Yeah.
And that just causes confusion and
the algorithm keeps learning. Yeah, the algorithm keeps learning, so you don't have to have all these people, which is utter bullshit because someone has to. It's AI is effectively an algorithm, right? You input, you output. You still have to figure out where it works.
Yeah, there's still someone there.
And also the part that I find hilarious is that the US is a monocultural sort of society, right? You come into Europe and Asia, you're going to talk about hundreds of different countries, different languages, different ways of buying. Like I was saying to you before, like if you were a pharma company and you've in-house processes, what about something like the Polish market where you go and have to buy media from these guys? You just can't. There's not video inventory on the open marketplace. You got to ring them and negotiate price, and then you got integrations, and they might use one system and you're using another system, and then obviously data points. All of that stuff is quite difficult.
Yeah. And the cost of people, the cost of hiring these type of people. It's very hard to find people, even right now in the current climate, who want to come and do those type of jobs for a salary. Clients don't necessarily want to pay the right price all the time for certain things. And same for agencies, sometimes they don't want to pay the right price for things. But in a market like now where we're seeing programmatic spend increase, we're seeing data-driven media investment increase because of things like direct-to-consumer strategies, because of things like Uber and Netflix being all the rage, and everyone thinking that's the only way that their business can proliferate.
But there was a good point made at the because I actually brought up that DTC stuff, like the next generation of brands are not interested in agencies, but someone made a very good point is that when a DTC hits a certain scale, they need branding for the top of the funnel, right?
Yeah.
So
ironically, was that Martin?
It was Martin, Martin Kelly, he said that they kind of meet in the middle, and you've got all these brands that want to be more DTC. So the value of an agency still has value there. I mean, that's why I'm talking about the service there is quite open at the minute, that everybody can pick up a piece.
Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment, that there's a certain point that they can get to on their own. There's a certain
through Facebook, Google, and then they need branding.
And then you need to go a little bit further. You need to get a little bit more complicated, a little bit more nuanced. Like you can't just think about, let's just activate all I spend in Facebook and all I spend in Google. There's then what about the 50 to 60 different ways of accessing a certain type of inventory that we can explore, or different optimization strategies, or new DSPs that we can use outside of the Googles, the Facebook.
And then consolidate your brand, because that DTC will ultimately have competitors. You need to have a brand.